Hi, my name is Julian Parms. I'm a junior here at the Capstone, double majoring in political science and communication studies, and this is the next episode of the Vodcast with our Shelby Institute speaker series.
Awesome. Where are you from, Judy?
I'm from Montgomery, Alabama.
Okay.
Yes,
good.
sir.
My name is Andrew Stovall. I'm a senior here at the Capstone. I'm majoring in business management. I'm from Winfield, Alabama.
Where from?
Winfield, Alabama.
Winfield. Okay. Well, as you know, I'm Doug Jones. I have an interesting career. Long ago, I was on the Capstone, way long ago. Since that time, I worked as a Senate staffer for Senator Howell Heflin. I then was in private practice in law school. I finished at Cumberland School of Law, finished here in '75. Then went to Cumberland Law School and got my JD degree. Went to Heflin's staff on judiciary. Then was in private practice for actually an assistant U.S. attorney. Then in private practice, then President Clinton appointed me as the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama. Did that for 4 years, came back into private practice, then got elected to the U.S. Senate in a special election in December of 2017, unelected in 2020, and had been doing a number of things since that time. Counsel at Aaron Fox Schiff, a law firm in D.C., Distinguished Senior Fellow at the Center for American Progress, and still doing a lot of all things political.
Nice. Well, we have a few questions for you. So we'll first start off with just a question that our institute has for you. So during your time working with Senator Shelby, what leadership traits did you observe that you believe led him to be as successful as he was?
Well, you know, I've known Richard for a long time. I actually met him initially when I was a student here. I was involved in Student Government Association activities. He was a young state senator at the time. And the one thing that I've seen over the years, because we've stayed in touch, we've been friends for a long, long time, when he was in the House, when he was elected to the Senate in 1986. The one thing about Richard that I have always appreciated and I believe led to his success is that he always considered his elected offices as a public service. Everybody, I think, to some extent, we all have our egos. We all like to aspire to those positions. But Richard always seemed to make sure that he was putting the state, his district, the people that elected him first. And I don't think we have enough of that these days. He has never been one to be a show pony. He let his actions do the work. And he did the hard work, and the state of Alabama is better for it. But I think that that's the hard. That to me is the greatest leadership skill that he has, is not letting the position that he holds dictate and get to his head and keep him from the mission of representing and doing things for the people of the state.
It's amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming to speak with us. Another question that we have is, what are the best recollections that you have of working with Senator Shelby as a colleague?
Well, you know, I got to be honest with you. For 3 years, we were great friends. We traveled a couple times. I went with him on a couple. I didn't travel a lot because when I got to the Senate, I knew I was going to have to start running again. And so I limited my codels, but I went with Richard to Paris, to London, to Iceland. Those were great experience, working with a bipartisan group of codels. I used to always just kind of call him up and I'd swing by his office. And he always had some really good refreshments late in the afternoon that we could get kick back and enjoy. But the thing about working with Richard is it's not just one particular issue. It's really a whole range of things, because I think people forget a lot of times that sometimes even a senator as powerful as Richard had become, there's only so far they can go within his Republican caucus. And so he would call me, his staff would call my staff, and there would be things that I could work from a different angle. We got some things for here in Tuscaloosa, down at the river, some other things like that. When it came time to appropriations, the staffs would talk, and we would kind of parse out what we felt like we could both achieve in the caucuses. It was a really great working relationship. And that's another, I think, skill set that a lot of people don't have. And that is working with a colleague on the other side of the aisle and really being able to understand their strengths and where you can supplement that, again, for the people of the state, though, not for that person or for you, but for the people of the state. So we had a lot of communications. We talked a lot all the time, and his staff and my staff worked really great together. And it was that collaborative spirit that I think, rather than any one big thing, he knew I was going to be there to help him with appropriations and anything I could in the Democratic caucus. And I think he understood, and I understood, that as far as he could, he would be there for me if there were certain really big things. You know, there was one thing I did that he was really instrumental in, funding. Is, you know, with my background as a U.S. attorney, one of the things that we did was prosecute this 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. So these old cold case civil rights cases were really important to me, and I long advocated for trying to make those public, the records of a lot of those cases. And so we introduced a bill creating a commission that would be presidentially appointed, that would look at all of these files, and if the case was closed or near closed, we would be able to make those files public. That commission is operating now. I was able to do it with Senator Ted Cruz. We got it established. We got the bill passed. But then it required funding. And so the next year, Senator Shelby and I worked together to try to get a couple of $1 million to federal funding to get that commission off the ground. And I'm always appreciative of the fact that he, even though the president didn't appoint the members, Senator Shelby knew it was important enough to me personally that he was able to get funding in there to get that commission going whenever the commission was appointed.
Thank you.
That's an awesome story. And that actually leads into another question that we had. I mean, it sort of relates back to your prosecution days. I mean, it's how did your time as a prosecutor contribute to your experiences and decisions during your time in the U.S. Senate?
Well, first of all, you know, I did 2 stints in the Department of Justice. When you do that and you're the U.S. attorney, you really develop a special affinity for the Department of Justice. And I'll be honest with you, that is being strained right now a little bit with some of the things that I'm seeing coming out of the president-elect. But you still have this affinity, and it gives you an understanding, I think, of the way democracy is supposed to work, especially in a criminal justice setting. We were able to do some things in a bipartisan basis to get some reforms, to work with people to do the things the right way, to get the kind of reforms necessary, I think, to make that process, the criminal justice process, more efficient. And so it informed a number of my decisions as a prosecutor. But candidly, I was also a trial lawyer. I did a lot of defense work. My history as a lawyer was as a trial lawyer. And while that didn't always inform my decisions completely, it really helped because I was a prosecutor and a defense lawyer. I jumped on both sides of that aisle a couple of different times. And that was really important to me because it allowed me in my professional career to see every case from different points of view. And when I got to the Senate, I could see everything from a different point of view. I was not myopic in my thinking. So my work as a trial lawyer and going and having different aspects of that, I think was really very helpful. And one reason I believe that even though it was only 3 years, I think we had a really good run and we were pretty successful.
Thank you. And our final question, you've already touched on this a little bit. Could you expand on the role that bipartisanship played in both your success and Senator Shelby's success in Washington?
It's a great question, and one that I worry that we're going to lose in the coming years. I think it has been on the wane a little bit. Let me first talk about myself and how I approached it. First of all, I got elected in a special election. And this is a very conservative state. It's a very Republican state. I was the first Democrat in 25 years that got elected. It was a special election. So I was somewhat of a political unicorn here. And for me, that was an advantage because it opened up a lot of opportunities to meet with folks on the other side of the aisle, to talk to them. They understood that where my politics may be a little bit more progressive than theirs, that I was open because I had so much in this state that I wanted to look out for, just like Richard did. Our business community, our defense industry, our agriculture, our education facilities, all of those things really cut across party lines. And I've always said that the goals of members of the U.S. Senate, and I'm going to stick with the Senate. The House is a little different animal. But certainly the goals of every U.S. Senator, the goals are essentially the same. And that is strong national security, good jobs, good economy, good opportunities for everyone. It's how you get there where there is the problem. And so I adopted this attitude of, if I can share goals with folks, we can figure out how to get there among ourselves. And so it was for me, it was incredibly important. I was very fortunate. My election was a very high profile election. So I got sought out by a lot of Republican senators as well as Democrats to join them. And that was great experience, because early on I was able to jump in the middle of some things and demonstrate that I was willing to work for folks, to buck my party when I felt like it appropriate, but also to help lead the party working on a number of things. And Richard was an inspiration for that, I will tell you, and I'm being very candid about that. And I said this, Richard became Richard Shelby, not because of his ego, but because, as I said, he really saw his job as a public service. And as a public servant, you've got to be able to talk to people. You've got to reach out. Some would call it horse trading. Others just call it compromise. Others would call it finding common ground. Whatever you wanted to call it, Richard was able to be a real master at that. He never was the type to alienate people. He was always friendly. He was always willing to work. He was always willing to listen to the other side. He may completely disagree with you, and he would tell you straight up. He'd tell you to your face if he would disagree and he couldn't do something. But at the end of the day, if he could find a way to do something, he would. And that was a good example for me. And again, having known him for as long as I had, when he was in the state Senate, when he was in the House, working to try to help him get elected in 1986, even though he abandoned the Democratic Party a few years later, which I still give him hell for, he was still somebody that I could look to as a mentor to help guide me and how to deal with other people, especially other egos. So I think the bipartisanship is something that's incredibly important. I think that there has been more of it than people see in Washington. I think it's, Lamar Alexander, the former senator from Tennessee, used to say that Washington, D.C. is the most bipartisan city in America. You just don't see it that way. But you get outside of that beltway, and it gets a little more tribal here in Alabama and across the country. But in D.C., people talk and they work. At least that's the way it has been. And I will candidly tell you, as part of this last question, I worry about losing senators like Richard Shelby because they were that inspiration. There was not a single member of that Democratic caucus that did not like Richard, that did not respect him. Sometimes they would just shake their head because he was able to get so much money. Okay, but that was part jealousy, that was part envy. But they all liked him. There was never a harsh word said, and by anybody that I can recall, even the farthest left members of the Senate. And I think we're losing a lot of that on both sides of the aisle. I think we're losing a lot of that, and I hope that somehow, some way, we can get back to that, and the institution of the Senate would become that more collegial body than I'm afraid it's about to become now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. We really appreciate it, and we know everyone else will too.
Well, it has been my pleasure, and I have done a couple of things to talk about my friend Richard Shelby, and I'm always honored to do it because his legacy in this state has been unmatched, and I predict it will go unmatched for years and years and generations to come. So thank you for allowing me to do this.